No, it doesn't let me stream on LinkedIn.
Oh, well.
Okay,
Yes.
I guess we'll just do with this too, and then we'll just upload it on LinkedIn, I guess.
Yep. Sorry, guys, on LinkedIn.
Yeah, unless you want to reschedule and do it on LinkedIn as well.
I'm fine with that. I think we're all set up here. Let's get cracking.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about the whole thing. Well, I mean, two people who work in tech and had this simple tech issue. I have no idea what happened. So everyone, sorry for the hiccup. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crypto Talks podcast. Today, we're gonna have a conversation, unfortunately, without LinkedIn this time, but hopefully, we'll make sure that we somehow upload it on LinkedIn, maybe in pieces. So Keir is my guest. We've been connected on LinkedIn for quite a while. I've been watching his walks in the woods and loads of interesting thoughts and ideas around the blockchain that he's generously sharing with all of us on LinkedIn. So thank you for that. And welcome to the Crypto Talks podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's very nice to I mentioned the walks in the woods and your videos because I feel like there aren't many people who are comfortable with creating content without really worrying too much about whether they impress people or not, and focusing on the content and on providing value. And I feel like, that is something that we all need more, not only on LinkedIn, but in general in social media. So thanks for approaching it from that perspective.
Oh, well, I mean, really, I think it just kind of evolved that way. I don't have the time to spend hours with video processing software. So I just grab my phone and go for a walk. I think the captions take the longest, and that's about 5 minutes. So
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start from the very beginning. I mean, blockchain is a relatively young, sphere in comparison with some others in tech. So I usually most of my guests have been doing something else before they moved into blockchain, and everyone has different stories in terms of how they ended up in the sphere and how they got interested in the blockchain technology. So, what was your story about that?
Well, I was working for a satellite navigation company. We were writing, and in fact, I was managing the testing of the software that receives the signals and processes them and works out where exactly you are on the planet. And so there were quite a few mathematicians in the company. And one of them came across Nakamoto's paper very early on and said, Keir, this looks like the kind of nonsense you'd be interested in. So I read the paper and I went and looked at the code. I think it was about half a year into Nakamoto launching it. So it would be like summer. Was it 2010 or 2009? I should know that, really, shouldn't I? Anyway, it had been around for half a year, and I looked at the source code.
I think this was 11 years ago, I think. Yeah.
And had a sort of a week or two poking around and thought, well, that's neat. I wonder if it'll ever take off. And then every time I came back to it, sort of half a year later, there were more people. It was getting more interesting. And I think it was finally in around 2013, I actually submitted an invention idea to my employer saying there's this thing called Bitcoin and this technology blockchain, and I think it's going to be important. And here are some thoughts I've had on it. And of course, they just sort of went, what on earth is this? It's nothing to do with satellite navigation. They didn't think any more of it. But by that point, I started keeping notes and thinking more and more about it. And really, it was end of 2015 that I went full-time into blockchain because they shut down our office and I was out of a job. So turns out it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. because I've been.
Yeah, it's interesting. Many people tell about that, when they have this turning period, when they are let go, or there is the company closes, or something like that happened. Many people don't realize that might be the turning point and towards something way better. So so it's interesting that what you're saying makes me think like back then. It was kind of a very niche audience that was able from the very beginning to get it and understand the depth of it and sort of believe that this would take off. I don't know. I mean, did you expect such development back then, or it was just something that intrigued you?
Well, I've got a blog post from 2013 where I ran some calculations based on the value of gold and the value of Visa and things like that, and I wrote there that it could be worth as much as $50,000 one day, and at the time it seemed like a crazy amount to be. Of course, we've gone over that now, but I didn't really have the confidence in my predictions. If only I'd actually gone out and shunted some real money into it, then I'd be in a different place now. But I'm happy.
Many people tell that, but I have a feeling like those people who bought Bitcoin back in the days with 10 cents, 15 cents, up to $1, most probably they didn't hold it until now anyway.
No,
most of
I
them.
know.
So
I know people like that who were really happy to sell their 5,000 Bitcoins and get $500,000. And of course, there's so much luck on the way. You could have put it all in Mt. Gox. You could have lost your hard drive. I mean, there were heaps of things that could have gone wrong. Your wallet.dat could have been hacked before they actually secured it properly. So really,
absolutely,
it's a total lottery.
And then going back and thinking what would have happened, etc. It's just a waste of time because it already happened. And it's interesting that you mentioned the price. I mean, we sort of segued into the price discussion, and it's the natural sort of topic that many are touching these days. And probably because the price had all-time high recently, that spiked a new sort of wave of people coming into it and more attention of the media and all that stuff. But I tend to believe that price is just part of the whole story, and there is much more to it than just the price or the speculations or making money element of it. Obviously, it drives and attracts a certain type of people to it, and money is a very big motivator. But I'm sure money is not why you are in the space specifically. That's my feeling. So
no, it's not.
What
it's
is
not
it?
about the money. It's just one of the most fascinating things out there. If we move away from Bitcoin and prices and look at blockchain, I mean, it contains mathematics and cryptography and computer science, but it also taps into economics and philosophy and sociology and psychology. And it singularly amongst all the technical things that I've looked at, it has tendrils that reach through the way we function as a society. And I'm a generalist. I love, the worst thing that can happen to me is finding a good Wikipedia article, because 6 or 8 hours later, I've read 300 more and a whole bunch of papers and stuff. And I just get distracted by these things very easily. And the wonderful thing for me about blockchain is that you can pick almost any topic and I can find an angle where it gives me a bit more insight into blockchain, because ultimately it's a social system. It's about how people are going to interact with each other. And it happens to be built on technology, but it goes a lot deeper than that. Anyway, that's my take.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like, the money side of it is very exciting for many people, obviously. But I think there is so much more to it, and the whole thing has such a big potential of changing many lives, and it actually already does. So so we have like these different types of people who are around the space doing different things, loads of projects from different directions, different aspects, many founders with completely different motivations and kind of, goals out there. And we have hot topics as well. Periodically, like within this whole period, we had many different subcultures or, sub divisions of the technology, specific channels, which kind of, were the rock stars or were the things that were at the epicenter of the whole thing. Like during the 2017 boom, it was the ICOs and the new tokens and the new projects that they merged. And later on, there was a bit of a gap and a vacuum, and people were trying to find a better way to fundraise on blockchain. And it kind of, they made different tries. Nothing really, I think, picked up as much as the ICOs did, but then ICOs didn't work either after that. And then now it feels like, the rock stars of the space are the DeFi and the NFTs, which is why I felt like NFTs would be an interesting discussion, because everyone is talking about it, but I have a feeling that not everyone understands what it actually is. And the interesting thing about NFTs, and maybe, I'm wrong, but my impression is that NFTs took off and get more interest from non-techie people and non-crypto people than anything else out there related to the blockchain at the moment. And probably it's because it's related to art, it's related to music, to things that people already understand by default, or maybe it's because when you talk about different NFT projects, there are more exciting and interesting stories that you could tell, which are more inspiring and people resonate with it better than talking about the tech specifically. I don't know, but how do you feel like, is this whole excitement justified, or it's just another hype that is going to dry off?
Well, I think you're right that it's the buzz is there at the moment because it offers some kind of hope to artists and musicians who have historically, on the whole, not been treated very well in terms of remuneration. You have rock star artists and musicians and singers, but there's a huge long tail of people who either are doing it for very little profit or just as a hobby.
Or for the record labels who take most of it.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. When you look at how many cuts are taken along the way, and when you look at how many slots there are in the top of the charts in music, for example, most musicians are not going to, unless you're a session musician, most of them are not going to make a living out of it. But I was in a band 20 years ago, and we were just doing it for fun. But one of the fun things was sitting in the pub after a gig and talking about how maybe one day we'd get signed and make a fortune. Actually, even the wealthy rock stars don't make nearly as much as you think. When you see people like Mick Jagger or David Bowie, who were very, very wealthy, they actually made most of their money from investing the initial money they got from being rock stars. The wealth multiplied. So I think when you're an artist and you're kind of living hand to mouth, and then suddenly you read an article that somebody sold this crypto token thing for so many millions, you start thinking, oh, hang on, maybe that's something I could do too. So it kind of sucks people in, and I see friends of mine on Facebook who are artists. They're interested in it because partially because they hope that it could get their art more recognized. But I think there is this element of, well, maybe I'll be the lucky one who actually sells something for $70 million. You're more likely to win the lottery, to be honest. And there is it's like when you look at the wealthy artists, if you look at a Damien Hirst or a Salvador Dali or someone like that, it's like the rock stars again. Very few people get to occupy those slots, and they are often as really good salespeople as well, and they are really well connected. I mean,
Yeah.
the mega bucks in these industries are all about connections and the community. And so, if you happen to be very good friends with a multimillionaire who wants some art and you're an artist, then maybe you will make a fortune. But most of us aren't. So there's that side of it. And historically, if you look at art, it's like that. There's always been thousands and thousands of artists, but when you look at the art history books, you see the same names over and over again. It's just the way human beings work.
Yeah, I mean, in the NFT space, though, I mean, I don't know, when the artists started coming in, like, do you think it was like everyone was starting from the same level? Because probably most of them were not familiar to like, what does it represent? What does it mean? How to do it? Everyone was learning from the start, right? So do you think all of them had equal chances, or like, how did that work? How Beeple became Beeple, or like, some artists are doing way better than the others? Is it because their art resonates better and more people like it, or is it the connections that you're talking about? Because I felt like the whole philosophy behind blockchain and NFTs specifically is this fact that it's open for everyone and everyone gets the equal chances to participate and, to find their fan base of their creations, etc., etc. So is that part of the story, or you see it in some other way?
I think that's the kind of hope that it raises. But if you pick Beeple, for example, we recently found out who bought his art. I mean, for starters, people have been working in art and technology for over a decade. So it's not like he woke up in January and read an article on Wired about NFTs and taught himself how to deploy ERC-721 contracts or anything like that. It wasn't overnight. And the other thing is, I seem to remember reading a day ago or so that the person who bought his art is an entrepreneur from Tamil Nadu in India, who he knew, who has made a fortune in cryptocurrency. So the connection was already there. The person who bought the art is connected into the space already. And
so this Christie's thing was just a PR and marketing element
so.
to it, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We never know the full story of what goes on here. Yeah. And maybe the article I read is wrong. Maybe they made up the entire thing. I didn't dig into it much further, but it's worth looking at afterwards, find out who actually bought the artwork, because it was kept hidden at first. And then, if you look at, for example, Jack Dorsey selling a tweet, well, I've got some tweets, but nobody would ever want to buy one of mine. And incidentally, we'll talk later about the fact that you can't buy Jack Dorsey's tweets.
Let's talk about that tweet thing, actually, because for many people, when you are buying crypto art, for example, or a music NFT, it's in comparison with a tweet, it's more tangible, and I can understand the motivation behind it. It's an art piece. Even if it's digital, you still like it. You would like to own it. There is like a collector's element to it, right? Or the music, or whatever it is. With the tweets, I'm a bit sort of, what actually are you getting? You're getting basically on a blockchain the proof that you are the owner of that tweet, and that tweet was originally the first tweet really written, made by Jack Dorsey, right? That's what you're getting eventually, a certificate proof of your ownership, or what are you getting? I mean, what happens if, let's say, the tweet is deleted or the Twitter account is closed? You just get...
Well, actually, I mean, it raises questions. What is ownership here? I mean, there's a smart contract on a blockchain, but that's just a piece of computer code. And it looks nothing like a legal contract. So there's your first thing. We've got fairly well-defined laws in most countries about what owning something means. And that's why, for example, it's very interesting that if you go and buy a work of art off an artist, you have bought the physical canvas, which you can hang on your wall. Typically, unless they're an artist for hire, that you specifically commission them as an employee, if they're a freelance artist, you don't actually own the copyright on that painting that you have. So you have a painting on your wall of, I don't know, a melting clock or a, some splodges or something like that, or a can of soup. You don't own the copyright, so you can't go and make T-shirts and mugs with that picture on them, even though you have the physical first version of it on your wall. All you have is that the canvas. So there's that side of things, but at least you have the canvas. Now with an NFT, what you have is an entry on a blockchain that says that that basically contains a link to a website that contains the music track or the picture that anybody can go to. So you don't gain any extra rights when it comes to the JPEG on someone's server or the Twitter tweet on Twitter's website. You've bought, what you bought is a link to that. Locked up in it. Yeah. So it's I use an example that it's that the NFT is like a finger pointing at the moon, and a finger a finger is not the moon. When you are buying the NFT, you are buying the finger. And this is one of the problems that we've had with I've seen with these articles is that people think they're buying the moon, they're buying Jack Dorsey's Twitter, or they're buying this. They're getting nothing other than a token on the blockchain.
So,
and yes,
so
that they do own.
Okay, yeah, but then the value of the token of the blockchain that proves that you're the owner of the tweet, let's say, if Jack Dorsey deletes that tweet, it will be a link taking them to 404, or like in that case?
Well, I haven't investigated the particular token, and they've evolved a bit now so that they're using the interplanetary file system to try and get a bit more persistence. You see, this is the other thing about them is, when you are owning a digital item, you're concerned about persistence. So you'd like to really have a copy yourself. You can't change the NFT token on the blockchain once it's been minted, other than changing its ownership. The rest of it is fixed. So if it has a link to www.twitter.com/jdorsey/ and then the ID of the tweet, indeed, if they delete that tweet, that token is now pointing at nothing. It's now a finger pointing at an empty sky. The moon's moved on. If what you can do is you can have the link point to a file on the interplanetary file system, and that file can then contain the link to the tweet. Except even there's a problem, because if you change the content of that file, you change its name, and then the NFT no longer points to it either. So
got it. So what do you think, like this whole, I mean, I understand this whole story of artists getting a direct relationship and link to its consumers with, bypassing gatekeepers. It's art. Critics or galleries should not be the ones who decide whether it's good or bad and how much it's worth. Here you have directly, like, if people are willing to pay millions for it, then for some people it's worth millions, full stop. Doesn't really matter if it's ugly, beautiful, who thinks what. Art is art, right? So I understand that story of no intermediaries, artists, direct platform for getting and reaching out to people, just like Kindle, Amazon Publishing did that for self-published authors, right? You don't need agents, you don't need publishing house. I write the book. If people like it, they will buy it. If no, but I have this opportunity for this direct relationship. So that story for me is clear, and it's very appealing. I also feel like there is loads of positive changes in the sense that with this format, many artists get exposure who otherwise wouldn't get, because many galleries and agents are looking for, so to speak, like commercial art or sellable art or a specific kind of, criteria, and certain things that don't match that, whatever expectations are, they will never be actually exposed, and people will not even know about the artist. Here, you get diversity, different styles, you get exposed to more interesting, probably, art pieces, etc. So I understand that too. What is a question for me is like, these price levels, and the millions that get higher and higher. Is this based on speculation and the expectations that it will be sold for higher later on? Or is it actually based on true belief that that's how much it's worth? Like, what is, like, I'm trying to understand buyer's perspective in this sense, because if it's a regular art pieces or memes or gifs or music, and it's like, I don't know, up to a certain amount price level, people love it, people want to support the artist, all that, I get it. But when it gets to 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, etc., what are the buyers thinking? Like, what would motivate them to pay such high prices? Because I think that's where the problem comes from, just the scale and the level of the whole hype and the price levels, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, for starters, it's not like there are 100,000 pieces of art out there that now have an NFT pointing to them that have sold for 6, 7, 8-figure sums. I mean, we're talking about a few reported upon cases. And they have now joined art history. When Duchamp put a urinal in a museum and said, "This is art," and signed it "Art Mart," it seemed ludicrous at the time. It's now an iconic piece of art history. When Damien Hirst put a shark in a tank, and in fact, I think Hirst, most of his art is actually made by assistants. He comes up with the idea and gets someone else to execute it. But his stuff has become art history. But the problem with history is that we tend to focus on the famous people. There's not really space. If you're reading the history of humanity, you can't really get your head around 10 billion people who existed or exist. There's too many. So you focus on world leaders and influential speakers and maybe, if you're lucky, significant inventors, things like that. You don't sort of focus on the average, and the laws of statistics say that we're all pretty average. There's not much space at the top. So when it comes to these art pieces, why they have these big prices, I guess it depends on the individual buyer. I'm sure there's a lot of speculation going on, and I think that Beeple's Beeple's NFT, even if it ultimately ends up pointing at nothing, is going to be something on the blockchain that will actually continue to have value because it's become a part of history. I think it's another page in the current chapter in the history of art. People always say, well, why is it that Jackson Pollock's splattering paint on a canvas is suddenly worth so much and gets hung in a museum in Washington? If you look at it logically and rationally, it has no real utility. It doesn't make sense. If you look at it with the soul, then it's part of sort of the human story of development. And I personally find art history fascinating. I wouldn't spend a fortune buying some of these works, though, even if I had that kind of money. But some people have that money and get satisfaction about possessing part of history. And indeed, a lot of them buy it as an investment. If you've got more money than you know what to do with, it's a good hobby. And we see that with wealthy people. They used to buy yachts in the 80s. Now the wealthy people build spaceships. They obviously have more money and they know what to do with. They spend it on that on these kind of things. And some people try to go to Mars, and some people want a very expensive painting on the wall, and some people want to hold the private key that allows them one day maybe to transfer on a non-fungible token to someone else. It's human beings are odd.
So, I mean, at the moment, when we talk about NFTs, we talk a lot about mainly about crypto art, a little bit about music, and that's kind of the main things that people focus on. But NFTs is at the end of the day, it's a technology, and
Yeah.
it definitely has more applications, and it's gonna have more applications in the world rather than just the art side of it. So what do you think, like, the other applications who haven't become popular yet are going to be in the future?
Well, I think, as I said, the current thing is just hype. I think in the near future, we're going to see NFTs in games, and NFTs and genuine collectibles with a real link somehow between them. So I think that's the short-term one. And games is an easy one because you can have a game and it can go and check on a blockchain that there's an NFT, and then you sign into the game using maybe even MetaMask, your private key. Anyway, you sign something that says this account belongs to this key, and the game can check that you own it. And then later you transfer on your NFT. Now something that you had in the game is gone. So that's
and it's in line with the psychology of the gamers, because they already use the schemes and all like similar elements already, not on blockchain, but it's within their style of activities. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, my kids play Pokemon Go, and they collect Pokemon Go characters in their phones the way that kids 10 years ago collected the cards. So they don't care whether it doesn't need to be a little cardboard paste board anymore, as far as they're concerned. Having it on their phone is just as good. And there are these games where there's a lot of trading that they seem to be involved in. I should really check up more closely exactly what they're doing, to be honest. But they talk a lot about how they're buying items and selling items in game. And I think with these items existing on a blockchain, you can actually start trading them between games, possibly. You can start trading them without having to rely on the game company, and they will exist after the game goes under. And that means that somebody can come along later and say, well, there was this item in Fortnite. Fortnite doesn't exist anymore. It's joined, Elite and Space Invaders. But now we have this new game, and for a bit of a historical blast, we'll allow those items to transfer into our game, and maybe get a whole bunch of players who used to play that old game joining the new game. So it's got marketing potential. But this again, this is from a gaming is. I mean, I was stunned to find out that games make 10 times what movies do, that make 10 times what music does, and they make 10 times what books do. And of course, being the idiot that I am, I go and write a book. I don't go and write a game. Like the one at the very bottom of the food chain. It's so that there's a lot of money floating around there, and it's just going to increase. But that's the short term. Longer term, I can see more industrial uses for them. You've got something that has clearly defined ownership, that is a unique entity. You can start tying it to other property, and there are some problems to overcome with that. Again, having a digital twin of a real world asset. That's kind of already being done in IoT in terms of modeling to decide on moving, in engineering, for example, building design, stuff like that. What is missing from those things is the actual ownership of the real items that are being created or being transferred. And so having a digital version of your real life asset, now with blockchain, you have the possibility of not just modeling what it looks like or how it reacts in a physical environment. You can actually model the ownership of it. And that then means that you can actually start effectively modeling economics as not just physics. So I think there's something there. And I did have a few other ones, but they've slipped my mind now. When they do actually finally start tying, say, music and NFTs together properly, you could draw up a contract that says that this NFT represents this song, and then you have collective management organizations, the royalty collecting societies that pay out this money. And I worked with the Finnish one for a while. There's a lot of these different societies, a lot of different processes. There's a lot of paperwork it can take. It's getting better, but it can take years for you to get your royalties.
Yes.
With an NFT, you can automate the ownership of the song, who gets what royalties, and you can effectively have it that if a payment is made to the NFT, it automatically distributes it to the multiple owners of that NFT in the right proportion according to their royalty ownerships. And you can actually sell on your royalties. You say, right, I own a song, I own the royalties to it. I'll sell on, it's a Christmas hit. It's going to be making money for the next 50 years. But I need money now. I'll sell that on. And you can do that without needing a lawyer. So
I think the other problem with royalties and music specifically, and I don't know if NFTs will be able to solve this from the technical perspective, is tracking how much was consumed actually. All these streaming services, all this actually understanding how much the royalties are and how much the artist should get, because I have a feeling that loads of it is being lost in between. And there are many, usages of music that are not compensating the author, the artist or the author of that music. So tracking it correctly and just, calculating that lost volume as well somehow. I don't know if it's possible with NFTs or not, but that's another issue that they are having in terms of,
Well, I think the problem there is that a blockchain is kind of a hermetic system. It's like a closed world in and of itself. And you can get information into it through oracles. You can force information onto it, but what you can't do is guarantee that the information you put there
is correct,
genuine. And, there's lots of interesting work going on with oracles to try and incentivize the people who contribute the information onto the blockchain so it's there on the ledger. And then could be acted on to do the payments, like you say, to be honest. But they don't really work in a kind of, those kind of oracles work in a public way where everyone's scrutinizing when 10 different parties report what the current Bitcoin to dollar price is. You put the honest amount in because you get a reward for it. And if you put the wrong amount in, there's 9 other people who put the right one in, and you get, maybe there's a penalty, some fund slashing or something happens. If you're looking at musicians' accounts, they're probably not going to want them just displayed out for everybody in the world to see.
True that.
And someone still has to put in the information that, this is how, this.
Yeah, it's a complex.
If this country played this song this many times on their national radio, and therefore they owe this much, and it still needs these organizations to collect on behalf of the artist, and unless you're very, very wealthy again. People like Madonna and Bruce Springsteen don't use CMOs. They do handle it all themselves. It doesn't make sense for somebody, and I have 5 songs on YouTube, and I think I've made a grandiose 30 cents or something in royalties, so it's not really enough that they'll pay me for them. I'm not going to go and do all the admin in order to make sure that I get my payments when someone plays one of my songs, or 12 seconds of it in Brazil or Singapore.
Let's try to understand from the technical perspective. We kind of explained what it is in terms of that it's not the moon, it's just the finger that points to the moon and stuff like that. I have a feeling that, at the moment, people know how to mint NFTs and know a certain popular types of NFTs like crypto art, music, etc. And that's what they follow, and everyone else kind of, tries to create something that is within that group, right? But from the technical perspective, if we understand what it could be potentially, because I guess it can be a multi-format something, right? It can be a sound, it can be video, it can be picture, it can, the file format can be different. It doesn't really need to be specifically one thing, right? So do you think, I'm just trying to understand, like, if we understand better what are the possibilities of what type of NFTs to create, maybe we will have more people coming up with more creative and new types of NFTs than the ones that we have at the moment.
Well, an NFT just points to a web page, right? I mean, it's at the moment what they do is they have this field called the URI, which is a universal resource identifier, which is similar to a web address. It just says on the internet you can find this data at this location. That's all the NFT contains.
So theoretically, anything on a website that you could showcase in any form on a website could become an NFT. So we can theoretically talk about TV series, about anything.
I mean, hold on. Let me go to your website. So, Alexander. Is it com? Right.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here at your page, and you have. Oh, no, I've typed the wrong one. I've gone to a jewelry store. You've got someone who's got a very similar name to you. Anyway,
and it's quite popular one, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, anyway, let's take their site then. So, they've got some images on there. They've got some text. I mean, I could put that web address in the NFT. So you make an NFT, just put your web address, or I can look on the page by clicking inspect and see that there's an image there. So I'll take that URL, alexander.com/images/background.jpg. And the thing is, I can go to anybody's website. I can go to a Wikipedia. I can mint an NFT in 5 minutes that points to any web address or any artifact on a web page, or any sound file that someone's got that plays as background music to their web page, because it's all there available. If you can type it in a browser and see it or hear it, you can put that link in the NFT. And I'm not even the owner of that.
So even if you don't have the rights of what is on that website, you can still mint and sell the NFT that points to that website, to that thing on the website, you mean?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I can make an NFT that points to bbc.com. And there's nobody who can stop me doing that. Now, the fact is, I'm not the Director General of the BBC. So presumably no one is going to buy the NFT off me because... but this is what I'm saying about you're buying the finger, you're not buying the moon. And all this stuff on the web is freely available for anybody to look at. And in fact, it makes no sense to make an NFT that points to something that nobody can go and see, because that means even the owner can't see it. If you own that token, the URL is there in the token. It's a public open blockchain. Anybody can browse through the blockchain, find all the ERC-71 contracts, find out the files they're pointing to. So it's not hidden. It's not even like only you can see your art. Anyone can. So this is why I say, what are you really buying is a token on a blockchain that has possibly been touched by the person who is selling it to you, or who has created it. So I don't know, did Jack Dorsey sign the tweet NFT with his own private key? If he did, maybe from a historical point of view, it's worth something. Did Beeple use his private key to sign his NFT? But it's really if I wrote a web address on a piece of paper and said, here you go, I own this piece of paper, it's my token, and it points to a piece of art that I made on my website, and I'm now going to sell you this piece of paper for $1 million, would you buy it? And the answer in most cases is probably not.
Okay, got it. I think that's the interesting point. I think what lacks, and you are right, that all this media coverage and all these conversations that people are having about NFTs, they don't really they don't showcase or they make it sound way nicer and more romantic in terms of what you're getting as an NFT, right? So because the way you explain it, it's kind of that whole nice packaging is gone. It's like you can see the skeleton and it's not so attractive, while the whole idea of okay, you know, I'm a collector, and because people use this argument of collector, right? I'm a collector, I'm collecting unique pieces of crypto art, right? But if that's not the case, so like even this term collector is already a bit like, yeah, collector of what? Collector of
tokens.
Directions toward, tokens that direct you to something, which is not as sexy as collector of a unique
crypto art,
expensive art, right?
yeah. I mean, it boils down. I said at the beginning, you've got to ask yourself the question: what is ownership? And the funny thing is, we all feel like we know what it means to own something. I mean, my 3-year-old twins will fight over a block of plasticine and say mine, because each of them believes they own it. And it's only when you start digging into it, and you can dig into it from a legal perspective. You can dig into it from where you're looking at contracts. I have a deed to a property, or I have a contract that says that I own a piece of land, or that I have a copyright. There's the legal side. Then you have the political side, which is the state parcels out the land. The state controls what you can and cannot own, and then you can look at it from the kind of practical point of view, which is that if I own something, I have sovereign control over it. I own my car, I have the keys, I can drive it, and you can't, and that's why I own it. If you now carjack it and drive off with it, I no longer own it, because I no longer have control over it, and the thief has illegitimately, under our laws, taken ownership of it, because they've now got control of it. So then when you look at an NFT, you've got to say, what do I have control over? You don't have control over the art piece. You don't have control over whether it's going to persist. The only thing you have control over is that token, in the same way that you have control over a Satoshi that you own on the Bitcoin blockchain.
So it's a lot of, I think it's a big role that plays the perception of people, like what they perceive the value of that thing is, right? Because like Dogecoin is a meme coin, and it still has some certain value in people's mind, right? And certain people buy it and they want to hold it. So I feel like that when you're explaining these things, like I'm sure there are loads of NFTs that have the same effect of the Dogecoin. Because
possibly, right? But the thing is that when Dogecoin came out, it was obvious that it was a joke. The guys who made it very clear that it's a joke, and it's become such a successful joke that it's now, I don't know what its market cap is, but I imagine it's like
a lot, especially after Elon Musk, it grew a lot.
Right. But the thing is, from the very start, people knew this is a joke. And therefore, if you decided to invest in Dogecoin, you went into it knowing that you were investing in a joke, hoping that the joke was going to kind of explode. The problem I see with NFTs is I think a lot of people who are thinking of spending money on them or putting time into generating them don't understand what it is that they are actually buying or what they are actually selling. And that's the difference. And when I read article after article, they talk about it in terms that are misleading, that make people think that you are buying this unique piece of crypto art, and you're not. You're buying a single token, and at best, you're buying a token that has been digitally signed by someone who you hold in high regard, or who you look up to, or who you think is of some kind of significance.
Although some artists also send you the physical version of that art. So in those cases, at
which point it becomes a nice to have, like buy the physical copy of the book and I'll give you the ebook for free kind of thing. And in that sense, yes, if there's a personal touch to it, where the artist has actually done that and they were involved in it, and you get it transferred to you, then that can be fun. Whether it's $70 million worth of fun is, of course, another question.
I mean, I guess it's it's an interesting space to watch in any case. I mean, again, yes, it's arguable whether it's how much which NFT is worth, and why would people pay so much money. But obviously, I feel like the space is very new, and it will be transformed into something else. And this whole hype is good in a sense that it's attracting loads of new people towards the blockchain, and for many maybe NFTs will be the entry point, but they will have curiosity to learn more, and then it will lead them to something else, and they will stick around in the space and get engaged into other activities as well, and not just NFTs. So I think it's still very positive. The whole hype will bring in people. And also, I have a feeling that this whole experimentation by many different creative people may lead to transitioning it into something else, or coming up with different new ideas, or developing the space further into turning it to something, I don't know, something different or something new. So it's interesting to watch. We'll see how it goes. But the thing that I really like about the whole aspect of it is not so much the prices and the token, etc., but just the fact that until now we had a very tech-focused, technological, not so creative stories around blockchain. Now it feels like we're getting a more fresh perspective, and maybe like a different crowd that may eventually play a bit of role of spicing up the space, more creative ideas around the space, and who knows, maybe things will get even more exciting than they are now.
Oh, we can hope so. Although I do think that, and it's another thing that always attracted me to blockchain, it is full of fantastic stories, right? I mean, the anonymous founder of Bitcoin, who is he or she or they? The pizza's getting bought for 10,000 Bitcoins, and we could just every year look at how much was paid for those pizzas, really. The craziness with the ICO days. I mean, there's just all sorts of odd and amusing and unusual stories, and I think this is just yet another one. It's just that's what blockchain is like. It does attract certain unusual people. Certainly, I can't think off the top of my head of any stories that match that kind of level to do with AI, for example, or like that, or databases. Although actually, Larry Ellison's quite an interesting chap, and he was a database guy. So maybe it's not entirely true, but it's got a wonderful mythology to it anyway. Bitcoin, I think, and blockchain, and I think it's gonna be fun to look back in 20 or 30 years' time and remember,
absolutely.
You remember when that happened, and
Absolutely. I'm sure that loads of things, like, we keep kind of, thinking and talking about stuff, and then thinking that, oh my God, it's almost impossible. There's no way it will happen. And then, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, it actually happens. And then you think about something else that is almost impossible, and then that happens again. So, I mean, this year has been interesting in different aspects, like things happened that we never thought about, and then after a while we got used to it, like, oh, Bitcoin, now people complain that Bitcoin is 50,000, while before, like a year ago, no one was actually certain that it would get to that point, right? So it's just we get used to this developments and to these amazing things that we never even thought would happen, and then we start complaining about some stuff that is one step backwards or whatever. So it's going to be interesting. But I guess as a wrap up of our conversation, probably we should upload our interview somewhere and just mint the NFT of it. Who knows, maybe someone will just get it.
Well, it's just, I mean, I can do it. I'd rather put it on the test network, to be honest, because it doesn't cost anything. That's the problem with these things. It's like, last article I wrote about it, I minted a few NFT. In fact, I minted the prime numbers. That's what I did. I decided I was going to sell the prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, because nobody else owns them. If I mint the first NFTs, surely they're mine. But then when I looked at how much it was going to cost me to actually deploy the contract onto Ethereum, and
the gas fees are
and I'd already spent my my April Fool's budget on filing a time machine patent, so I didn't have the budget spare for any more jokes. So,
got it. Okay, well, I mean, thank you very much for the time. It was interesting. I discovered lots of things about NFTs. You spoiled a little bit of the initial excitement around them, to be fair, but it's okay. It's fine.
It needs doing. It's better to find out sooner rather than later, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean,
Before you
now
go and
at least.
spend your remortgage your house to buy one. At least now you know what you're buying.
Absolutely. And then, at least now I'm way more knowledgeable about them than I was before we spoke. So that's always a big plus. So yeah, thanks everyone who was watching. Thank you for your time, and yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.